Welcome back, horror fans. Today we're diving into the twisted, gory, and unapologetically brutal world of Terrifier, the indie horror series that took the slasher genre by storm with its psychotic, unstoppable villain, Art the Clown. So grab your popcorn and maybe a barf bag, because we're going to dissect Art the Clown's terrifying rays across 3 films, and why the series has become such a modern horror phenomenon. Now, Art's journey begins with All Hallows Eve from 2013, an anthology horror film where Art the Clown makes his first sinister appearance. Directed by Damien Leon, introduced Art here as a bloodthirsty maniac without a word of dialogue. This film lays down the groundwork for Art's character, grotesque, sadistic, and completely unpredictable. But what makes Art so unsettling? He's silent, but expressive. He has exaggerated, mime-like expressions, so there's know exactly what he's thinking, and trust me, it's never good. Terrifier, the first film, follows 2 young women, Tara and Dawn, who after a night of Halloween partying and drinking, cross paths with Art the Clown. The film kicks off with a brutal cat-and-mouse game that stretches the boundaries of terror and horror. There's not much in the way of story depth here. Terrifier is raw, direct, and unrelenting in its focus on Art's killing spree. Now I know this choice may divide the audience. If you're expecting intricate plot twists, you won't find them here. But for fans of unfiltered, in-your-face horror, Terrifier offers an experience that almost feels primal. One of Terrifier's biggest achievements is its antagonist, of course, Art the Clown, who doesn't utter a single word of dialogue, but his expressions and body language are more than enough to send shivers down your spine. David Howard Thornton brings Art to life with an eerie, almost playful demeanor, making every scene with him unpredictable. His performance is a huge part of what makes Terrifier so disturbing. Now, no review of the Terrifier films would be complete without talking about the gore, and Terrifier 1 does not hold back. The practical effects are impressive, especially considering the film's budget, and some scenes go into brutal graphic territory that feels inspired by 80s slasher classics. There's one scene in particular that made this movie infamous among horror fans, and you know it when you see it. However, I must warn you that this level of graphic violence isn't actually for everyone. If you're squeamish, you've been warned. But if you're a fan of practical effects and gritty horror, Terrifier does an impressive job of pushing the boundaries. One of the most goriest scenes in my mind is a scene that I can't even show you, because if I did, my channel would probably get taken down, so I'll explain it to you the best I can. Art has cornered Tara in a rundown building and pulls down a curtain to reveal Dawn, hung upside down in her birthday suit. He then proceeds to pull out a hacksaw out of his bag of tricks and proceeds to saw her in half from her midsection all the way down through her head. In an interview, David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Clown, said that when he first read the script, he asked that it was going to be implied that he did that. He was told nope, the audience is going to see the whole scene in all its bloody goriness. Now, after a few more scenes of gore and fun, Art finally catches up with Tara's sister Vicky, who is also trying to run from him. He proceeds to tackle her to the ground and starts to eat her face. The cops finally show up, and it seems that Art is caught. However, he decides to not let that happen. He pulls out a gun and shoots himself. However, when you think it's the end of Art, we see a scene at the coroner's office, where the coroner is going over all the victims of Art's massacre. When he gets to Art's corpse, it suddenly rises up and proceeds to strangle him, and after Art does his wonders strangling the coroner, we are then taken to a hospital. Inside the emergency room, we see a person on a wheelchair with other 2 people standing next to her on either side. As the camera pans out, we realize that that person in the wheelchair was Victoria, also known as Vicky, Tara's sister, who was the one who actually survived the attack and was the one in the previous scene that got her face eaten by Art the Clown. I made a mistake, so I corrected it. So what happens when one of the most brutal killers in indie horror history gets a second shot? The stakes get raised, the blood flows even harder, and the nightmare somehow gets even more twisted, and you get... So Terrifier 2 picks up where the first movie left off, with Art the Clown somehow resurrected and coming back more dangerous than ever. And unlike the stripped-down slasher feel of the first, this sequel goes big. Art's target this time, Sienna, a teenage girl with a complicated family background and a younger brother who's obsessed with art for some reason, It's like Halloween meets Nightmare on Elm Street with its own vicious spin. Terrifier 2 takes a deep dive into both its protagonist and the mythology surrounding Art, which wasn't a thing in the first film. Santa, played by Lauren Lavera, is an amazing final girl in horror terms. She's not just trying to survive, she's got her own strength and weapons to wield against Art. She's a refreshing change from the hapless horror tropes, which makes their dynamic electric. One thing fans of the first film were definitely looking forward to was the gore, and Terrifier 2 does not hold back. Damien Leon, the director, and the FX team go all out with practical effects. There's more creativity and cringe-inducing detail in every scene, but it's done in a way that doesn't feel cheap. The kills are inventive, shocking, and disturbingly well executed. We get limb-tearing, flesh-ripping, bone-crushing action that horror fans crave. And it's all practical. For gorehounds, it's a wild ride. The movie starts out right after the events of the first movie. We see Art strangling the coroner. He gathers up all his bloody clothes and heads to a laundromat, of all places, to wash them. While waiting for his clothes to get washed, he sees a strange little female version of himself. We are now introduced to one of Art's sidekicks, known as the Pale Little Girl. Art interacts with her by waving at her and smiling, all the while the other person in the place looks over at what Art is waving at and sees absolutely nothing. Art notices the guy, and then as Art leaves with all clean clothes, we see sitting in a chair is the same guy, but this time he is impaled with a mop handle off screen. Time then fast forwards to 1 year later, where we're taken to the home of Sienna Shaw, a teen girl who is in the process of finishing up her Halloween costume, a warrior princess, which was designed by her dad, who had passed away from a brain tumor that somehow was the reasoning for the visions he had, and her brother Jonathan, who has some morbid fascination with Art the Clown to the point that he even wants to dress up as Art for Halloween. After stating her concern for her brother's costume idea, Sienna decides to go to bed watching a horror movie of all things, and she dreams that she is in a commercial for a restaurant. Now, if you follow my Facebook page, you would have seen my post on this year's annoying horror movie song. In past years, I have used the Silver Shamrock song from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. However, Terrifier 2 gave me this year's song. That's right, the song for the very same commercial Sienna dreams about, The Clown Cafe. So that's all I'm going to say about the plot. So what makes Terrifier 2 a must-watch? Well, Art the Clown is hands down one of the most terrifying villains of recent horror. In Terrifier 2, he's not just a murderous figure lurking in the shadows. He's an entity that almost feels supernatural. His kills are brutal, but his silence, expression, and downright lethal cruelty that makes him iconic. David Howard Thornton somehow makes Art chilling and strangely humorous without saying a single word. Terrifier 2 gives him more room to play with his sadistic personality, like watching a nightmare take human form. Whether he's mocking his victims or toying with them before going for the kill, Art's character is more menacing than before. Terrifier movies aren't your typical low-budget horror film. Terrifier 2 has the gritty indie feel, but with a style that feels polished. The lighting, the color palette, and the tension-building cinematography are all upgrades from the original. It is clear that Leon put everything he had into this movie, and the visuals reflect that passion. Ultimately, Terrifier 2 is a horror film made by the fan of the genre, for fans of the genre. It is bloody, intense, and unapologetically graphic, but that's what makes it so memorable. If you're into a horror that pushes you to the edge of your seat and makes you squirm, Terrifier 2 is a must-watch. Just keep the lights on. Now, I do want to suggest one thing, and that is to stay after the closing credits, because you'll see how Art is erected for the third film. So what happens when one of the most brutal killers in indie horror history gets a third shot? Well, you get this year's horror masterpiece that has literally taken over the box office with amazing numbers, Terrifier 3. The movie begins after the events of Terrifier 2, and right before Christmas nonetheless. Yes, where the first two took place around Halloween, this one takes place during Christmas Eve. So it starts with a cop responding to the events from the second movie at an asylum, only to find that Vicky, possessed by the little pale girl from the second movie, has given birth to the head of Art, while his headless corpse arrives to reclaim it. And soon Vicky and Art go on a killing spree. Now Art's growing tired and he needs a rest, and Vicky decides to play with rats at an old rundown house. 5 years later, 2 workers were sent in to assess and give the order to demo the place arrive. One is very skittish, however, and the other one picks up on this and uses it to his advantage, telling a tale that the house once belonged to a serial killer who killed kids and buried them in the house, which spooks the other one. Now, there's a theory going around that Art was human before he became an immortal clown of death, and the tale of the serial killer might actually be true for the lore. I have some belief in that, because if you watch the first film, you see a person actually dressing up as the clown, who soon becomes Art the Clown. Now, if you thought Terrifier 2 set the gore bar high, well, Terrifier 3 smashes right through it. The film was relentless in its violence, with each kill uniquely brutal and disturbingly creative. Art the Clown really amps up the sadistic humor here. Let's just say that for horror fans who love a good practical effect, this movie delivers. One of the most memorable scenes of gore is where Art is at the college that Jonathan is attending. He overhears two people talking about him. One desperately wants to meet him for some morbid reason, and sometime later Jonathan's roommate Cole and his girlfriend Mia, the girl who wants to meet Art for some reason, are having a bit of shower sex. When, while enjoying the moment, Art appears with a chainsaw and proceeds to, well, do what he does best, saw them in half. First he completely destroys Mia, and then he decides to repeat what he did to someone in the first movie, but instead of hanging him upside down and using a hacksaw, he just does it while Cole is on his back on the floor. He starts at his midsection and proceeds to just saw poor Cole in two. Now, I'm not going to talk any more about the movie or give any more of the plot. One, I don't want to spoil the movie too much, and two, this video has gone long enough. So let's talk about how this movie was actually marketed. Terrifier 3 was first released in the UK, where for weeks you saw headlines about people who either left or had gotten sick after the first 10 minutes of the film. Yes, that was not true, but it was part of marketing the film. I mean, this is an absolutely brilliant idea in my mind. Who doesn't want to see why people left the movie or got sick after the first 10 minutes of a gory horror film? The only other movie I know that used that same tactic was the original Exorcist, with rumors that barf bags were handed out and theaters had smelling salts on hand to revive people who passed out. Now, I know that none of this actually happened, but it was an awesome way to get people to go see the movie. Playing on people's morbid curiosity is a great way to get them to see it. It was sort of used also in marketing the Paranormal Activity films, where you saw people's reaction to the film. Now, do I think Terrifier films are worth a watch? Well, hell yes. But then again, I'm a huge lover of gory horror films. Hell, I'm a huge fan of anything gory. Hey, I saw the movie Boy vs. the World before it came out when my local theater here holds a Monday night mystery movie, and that is one of the goriest action films I've ever seen. The only other films that live up to the level of gore that the Terrifier movies have are Japanese horror films, in my opinion. Let's not forget the acting. Aside from Chris Jericho's cameo role as the star of the film, the cast of the film was great. Lauren Laver's role as Sienna Shaw in both the Terrifier 2 and this one play an awesome final girl. Now, for those who have no idea what that means, well, the term final girl is a movie trope. That means that she is the one female who survived and is then forced to face the killer in the end. Old school final girls movies include Jamie Lee Curtis's role in Halloween, excluding the third one, as Laurie Strode, and the original final girl Jess from Black Christmas. Even though Jonathan dies in the film, we really don't see how, which is strange for these films, I guess. I will talk more about that theory later. However, Elliot Fullarn did an awesome job in both films. Now, the two people I think deserve a hell of a lot of credit, of course, is the director Damien Leon and David Howard Thornton. Even though he was not the first person that played Art the Clown, to me he is Art the Clown. Just like Johnny Depp is Jack Sparrow, and Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool, and Hugh Jackman will always be, in my mind, Wolverine. I urge you to go see it in theaters. It is a much more better experience, but if you want to watch it at home on streaming, you have to wait till November 26th to do so. In the meantime, if you haven't watched the first two, I suggest you do, so you can understand how Sienna and her brother play into this one. I give all three movies 10 out of 10 art heads. The level of gore and David's portrayal of Art the Clown is by far the best I have seen in horror movies by far. Alright, horror fans, what did you think of Terrifier 3? Was Art the Clown as terrifying as you hoped, or did the movie push the limit a bit too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more horror reviews, retro gaming content, and anything else I can think of. I'm Professor Retro saying peace out, stay spooky, and happy Halloween.